GOP presidential candidate Senator Marco Rubio is here to go on the record. Senator Rubio surging in the polls since last week's debate. The new Wall Street Journal NBC poll showing Rubio in third place with 11%. And now our conversation with candidate Rubio. Senator, nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you.
You've had a good week or so. We had, in particular, the reports to me of the debate. You had a good debate. You've gotten the endorsement of Paul Singer, a billionaire. You've gotten Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado. That's big. And I saw on Twitter that you have a new short ad that talks about your vision of the future. All that's good. So here comes the but. And this is not just for you, but it's for the House, the Senate, and the President. A report came out from the Inspector General in Afghanistan that a gas station that should have cost anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000 cost $43 million. So where is the House? Where is the Senate? Where is the President? And where were you?
That's right. Well, first of all, the oversight on this is not just limited to that. Spending in Afghanistan has been an issue for years in terms of the money being misspent. The oversight committees are supposed to have oversight over how that money is being spent, both the defense oversight committees and the overall and general oversight committees in both the House and Senate. And I hope they'll take that Inspector General report and do something about it.
It's too late, though. It's $43 million.
Well, but we still
and I think this is why so many people are talking about outsiders. It's sort of like y'all had your chance. And this is the kind of spending, so it doesn't go for education, doesn't go for infrastructure, $43 million. I mean, it is the tip of the iceberg.
Sure. But first of all, that issue in Afghanistan, that's not the first time that we find wasteful spending and how the money's been spent there. There's other examples of it elsewhere. And that's, for example, why I've been pushing hard for the Foreign Aid Accountability Bill that I filed in the United States Senate that we can't get movement on. That's the reason why on these issues that you talked about, it is important for us to be engaged in the world, but not in a way that throws away money. In the case of Afghanistan, it is a place with deep amount of corruption, obviously a deep amount of instability, and that's where you get these sorts of outcomes such as this.
But it's not even there. We have buildings in the United States that are empty, federal buildings that are empty, just sitting there that we're paying for.
Well, the federal government doesn't even know all the property that it owns. It doesn't even have a clear inventory over all the land and property. If you ask them tomorrow, give me a list of every building you own in the country, they can't even produce that for you. They don't know even their own real estate inventory.
So that brings me to the question is that, the problem with the outsiders versus the insiders, that many of the voters, I assume, might be sitting there thinking that for you, Senator Cruz and Senator Rand Paul being inside, it's like, time's up. We still have these problems, and you're lovely, nice people, but, we got these problems.
But I've been in the Senate for 4.5 years. 4 of those years under Democratic leadership in the Senate. Where nothing happened, where Harry Reid allowed nothing to move forward. We can come up with all the greatest ideas in the world. If you have a Senate Majority Leader that has paralyzed the Senate and a president that isn't serious about doing anything, you're limited in our republic by making progress. It's one of the reasons why I'm running for president.
As president, what could you do, and would you make this commitment? Because I think it's now come to the point when you look at things like this, we got to look at indictments. Enough of this stuff with these contracts. Because if you can figure out if Dennis Hastert can get an indictment for lying to the FBI or Martha Stewart to the FBI, I can't imagine.
Well, certainly there was criminal activity. There would be an indictment from the Justice Department. Well, remember the report just came out. But if you talk about what's happening here with this, it's not just an indictment of the individuals if there was criminal wrongdoing, but also accountability. At the end of the day, there were individuals involved in the spending of this money, whether it was the State Department, USAID, or the Department of Defense. And that there has to be oversight over that as well as the way our contracting process is.
But it's not even just oversight's too late. That's almost like afterthought. I mean, something's got to be done fundamentally so that, and I really think it's got to come to the point where people are prosecuted for, fraud and at least investigated, I should say.
Well, if there's fraud, there's no doubt about it. But beyond the fraud issue is the incompetence issue. And again, there's a variety of different ways that we spend money in places like Afghanistan. Some is through USAID, some is through the Department of State, some is through the Department of Defense. Those are executive agencies that should be responding to someone at the executive branch that's overseeing how these programs are being implemented.
Would a President Rubio make a commitment that that fraud and waste, and we're not just going to do lip service to it, but we are really going to be aggressive at it?
Well, for example, there's an area you don't touch that has nothing to do with this. It's Medicare fraud. Medicare fraud. I happen to live in a community in South Florida which leads the country in Medicare fraud. Billions of dollars a year being stolen in fraudulent claims. That, quite frankly, I've had FBI agents tell me if you're willing to only steal $200,000 a month from Medicare, they're never going to catch you, because they don't have the resources to prosecute. Those are billions of dollars right there that are being spent, and that's an issue I've been harping on for years, about the need to reform the way we pay out Medicare benefits, perhaps requiring providers under Medicare to have a bond, an anti-fraud bond, that would knock out a lot of these fly-by-nights, because these people are setting up shop. they're billing Medicare, and then as soon as the heat comes, they close and open up a new shop, and no one ever catches them.
All right. President Obama is now making fun of the GOP debates, saying the Republicans can't handle a bunch of CNBC moderators at a debate, and he was making the reference, how do you expect to stand up to Putin? Okay. Your response to President Obama?
Well, my only problem with the CNBC debate was I thought they wasted an opportunity to ask questions about the economy. That was my issue. I don't care about the other stuff. I anticipate we're going to get asked tough questions. And because I'm a conservative...
Tougher, irrelevant questions, some of them.
But my point was, it's the only complaint I had was, we had a debate on CNBC where we had an opportunity to go in depth on taxes, the debt, trade, all the global issues that are going on in the economy, and they were barely touched. And I just thought it was a missed opportunity. I know most of the candidates had prepared for an in-depth economic discussion, and instead we got things that had nothing to do with the economy or the future of the country. I think that was the disappointment from my perspective. I don't have any other complaints. Debates are supposed to be tough. They're supposed to be difficult. And I anticipate that as a conservative, they're going to be even more difficult because there is bias in the mainstream media.
I guess for me, as a voter and a viewer, is that when the first question is, what is your weakness, was the question. It would be different to me if it had been, what's your business weakness? Do you know what I mean? I know that's, and I thought maybe you're right, missed opportunity.
But I thought my complaint
I don't consider that tough. I consider that as like, we have too much time on our hands.
Well, these guys are allowed to ask whatever they want. It's a free country, and certainly in our republic, we have vibrant debates about a lot of things. My only complaint the night after the debate was, the morning after the debate was, we didn't get into deep economic issues, which is what I think most people tuning in on a CNBC debate were looking forward to.
Why are the two big Florida Republicans, Senator Marco Rubio and Governor Jeb Bush, being beaten in the latest poll by Donald Trump?
Well, look,
in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unusual political year. People are really angry. You touched upon it earlier. And I think, to his credit, Donald has touched upon some of that frustration that exists. I don't believe that'll be the numbers by the time we get to March. Primarily because the race is going to narrow, and when it does, it's clear that people like myself do much better than in a broader race. But in the reality of it is, there's a tremendous amount of frustration about the direction of our country. People are saying, we got a majority in the Senate and nothing has changed. We're angry. And that's being manifested in these polls.
Why did that happen? Why did that happen?
Why did what happen?
I mean, why do you have a majority in the Senate and you have the House? I mean, like, what?
I think there's a lack of urgency. I've argued that one of the things we need from our next president is a sense of urgency about the issues that we face. We don't have 10 years to fix the debt. We don't have 10 years to deal with our national security issues.
Which brings it back to this report, this is from the Inspector General. Do you know that when the Inspector General wanted to know why they spent $43 million on a $500,000 gas station, the Pentagon didn't know? I mean, the Pentagon doesn't even know.
And so it's not just that. I mean, you're limited to that, but you look at our contracting practices in defense, which I'm a big proponent that we actually need to fully fund our Defense Department. But when you throw away money, on top of that, you're wasting money you already have. Look, there has to be systemic reforms in the way that the country, for example, contracts out for defense programs, or the way it spends money overseas in programs such as this. There's no doubt about it, but that has to be fixed at the executive level. They have to be accountable to somebody ultimately, and if it's a Defense Department spending, they have to be accountable to the Secretary of Defense in terms of how that money is being spent. And if it happened under someone's watch, they need to be removed from their post.
Immigration reform, where do we go? Where are you from that? You had the unsuccessful run at immigration reform. So
well,
where are you now?
A lot has changed since 2013, primarily a migratory crisis on the southern border, an unlawful executive order that legalized 5 million adults in this country. The result is the only way to move forward on immigration reform now begins by proving to the American people that we're making significant, serious progress on limiting illegal immigration. And until you do that, you're not going to be able to do anything else on immigration.
Path for the undocumented here, path to citizenship?
Once you've brought illegal immigration under control, the second step has to be to modernize the legal immigration system so it's merit-based. And then the third step, I think, Americans will support a very reasonable approach to someone who's been in this country for 15 years illegally but is not otherwise a criminal. They'll have to pass a background check, obviously, learn English, start paying taxes, pay a fine, and they get a work permit. And that's all they're going to have for 10 years. After those 10 years are expired, I personally am open to allowing them to apply for a green card, assuming they've lived up to the conditions of that temporary status. Other people just want to leave it with a work permit. And that's probably the majority position in our party right now.
Where are you on climate change? Senator Lindsey Graham, who's also competing in 2016, he says that he's not a scientist, as he has grades to prove it, which drew a laugh at the first debate the other night. But he says that climate change is real.
Yeah, because the climate's always changed. There's never been a time when the climate has not changed.
So do you see that as a national security issue, as a real issue?
I see that as this, and that is, as a policymaker, we are being told climate is changing because of man-made activity. These are the laws we want you to pass. So I look at those laws they want us to pass, and I ask them, well, how many inches of sea rise will that law prevent? Their answer is, well, it won't prevent any, but we'll set an example for the world. But then I look at the economic impact of that law, and it's significant on real people, making America uncompetitive for business and jobs. And I say, so let me get this straight. You want me to support a law that does nothing to help the environment, but will have significant negative impact on our economy? That's a terrible trade-off.
Do you also have a longer view that in the event that, a longer view of climate change and maybe do something differently?
Yeah, but ask China or India to do something about it.
Well, they won't. They say that we have destroyed the environment for decades.
Well, they're wrong. We're cleaner than they are. America has
now we are, but they say that for years, we've been ahead of them in manufacturing and all sorts of things, and that we've dirtied up the environment.
Well, America, as I said in the second debate, America's not a planet. They want us to pass these laws that will hurt our economy. Of course China wants us to hurt our own economy. They want to be the global superpower. I'm not supporting policies that are going to hurt our economy and have no impact, zero, on the climate, particularly as China, India, and other developing or developed countries continue to ramp up carbon production.
What would you support?
Well, I think the American innovator. If people are interested in saying, look, we need less carbon emissions, we need to become more efficient in our use of energy, I'm in support of that. Let's lead the world in energy efficiency, but let's lead it through technological advances. I support leading the world in solar and wind and biofuels and in renewables, but I think we would be reckless and irresponsible not to fully utilize our natural gas, which is a clean fuel, and our oil, too, especially allowing Americans to export it. These are realities that we're going to have to do if we want to grow our economy significantly. And I believe the American innovator will continue, without government interference, to do what it's doing now, which is to make us more energy efficient and cleaner.
Could you work with Democrats?
I have. In the past, for example, many of my higher education reforms are bipartisan. Whether it's right to know before you go, where students are going to be told how much they're going to make when they graduate from that school with that degree before they borrow money. Whether it's the alternative accrediting process that I've created or trying to create for non-traditional students, whether it's income-based repayment for people that now owe thousands of dollars in student loans and can't pay them back. These are all bipartisan ideas. Whether it was the Girls Count Act that I passed earlier this year. I have no problem working with people on the other side of the aisle. What I'm not going to do is compromise my principles. And there are issues where we fundamentally disagree with the Democrats on the role of government in society and in our country. And on those issues, we're going to have an election.
It seems that there's a difference between fundamental disagreement and fight. And it seems like right now that everyone's in sort of a fight mode. I don't mean you or anything else, but I mean, it's like everyone. It's more like instead of finding solutions, people take sides.
But there are some issues worth fighting for because there is an ideological difference. But you can still have a good, strong, vigorous debate. I think. Look at I'm sure you get the same emails I get about every single topic. Because people are. It seems like in this nation, are a lot of people who are less interested in looking for solutions and figuring out how to work over our differences than just having. But some of these issues. So, for example, we can agree that there's a problem in America with too many of our jobs don't pay enough. The problem is the Democrats think the solution is some new tax and some new government program. I believe it's allowing free enterprise to work. That's a fundamental disagreement. We're going to have to argue about that. We don't have to be rude. We don't have to be nasty. We don't have to be disrespectful. But we're going to have a debate about that and ultimately an election. Because the Democratic Party has become a left-wing party taken over by radicals in that party that want to expand the role of government and make us like Sweden or Norway or whatever it is Bernie Sanders said. I want us to be America, and I want us to be greater and more free enterprise than we've ever had before.
Well, enjoy the debate next week and enjoy my home state of Wisconsin. So enjoy Milwaukee. Anyway, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.